Hi, Lawrence LeBrocq, Managing Partner of Garces, Grabler, and LeBrocq. Welcome to Victim to Victory, Triumph Over Tragedy. Today we have a unique guest. My pleasure to have Carl Banks, former All-Pro from the New York Giants, was part of the World Championship Giant teams in the late 80s and early 90s. Great outside linebacker, played with Lawrence Taylor, Harry Carsons, and Gary Reason were the four linebackers. They were incredible. I watched them when I was in law school, dating myself a little bit, but it's an honor to have you here today. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me. This is a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to this. This is kind of a different conversation, like non-sports but sports, you know.
Right.
And I get to pick your brain, and you get to ask me all the things that your fan base would love to hear.
Well, the theme behind this is people that have overcome some sort of
Sure.
tragedy or challenge in their life and how they've been triumphant and able to overcome that. Now, you and I both come from a very blue-collar background.
Yeah.
You know, I remember Flint, Michigan. My one vacation in my whole childhood was driving to my relatives who lived up in Traverse City, Michigan. And we
Yeah.
drove through Flint, and at that time, there was like a mass murderer going through Flint
Yeah.
back in those days. So it was a rough area. So tell us a little bit about your upbringing and the challenges you faced growing up in Flint at that time.
So it's interesting, and you know the famous producer and movie maker Michael Moore, who made the movie Roger and Me, and it was a big General Motors town, and
Right.
then General Motors left. You know, the car industry divested in from Flint and from Saginaw and Detroit. Now it's coming a little bit back to Detroit, but that was, you know, our essence in that
Sure.
town. It was a blue collar town. It was spark plugs, engines, and auto. And so we all grew up in blue collar households, right? And punching, you know, our parents punched the clock, or my mother was a postal worker. My father was a corrections officer. But all of my uncles, all blue collar, all, you know, Buick, Spark Plug, Delta. And it was blue collar. And the interesting thing about Flint is that it's a town of about 100,000 people. But if you go look at the rosters of NBA and NFL teams, you'd be shocked at the amount of pro athletes, Olympic athletes that come out of a town that small. But it was the work ethic, right? It was, and I don't think any of my parents' friends or any of my friends' parents would dispute this. They didn't want us to work in factories. They wanted us to do more. They worked hard so that we could go to college and become more than that, right? And there was no shame in that living because it paid the bills and food on the table, right? But we had a different work ethic in Flint, right? Because we knew what it looked like. We knew what hard work looked like, but we also knew that there could be an opportunity for us. And fun story, I'm in probably my junior year in high school. And there was this one gentleman, his name is Peter Budarakis. He was a supporter of all things sports in Flint. He owned a cemetery called Graceline. He owned several, but Graceline Cemetery was one of the biggest in the area. And we all worked there. As I worked from my junior year in high school through my senior year in college. And the experience was so unique because he wanted to expose us young athletes to a different part of the world. Not the digging graves, because we had to do that, but we were working beside ex-convicts.
Right.
Right? These are people rehabilitating their life. And then, a lot of those ex-convicts knew my father because he was a corrections officer, but the life experience that he wanted to teach us. And we were in no danger because these were legitimately men that wanted to change their lives.
Sure.
Right? But to sit and hear the stories, for them to tell us the cautionary tales, for them to tell us what to avoid, how to avoid, right? I couldn't have gotten a better life lesson heading into adulthood than to be working with, right besides digging graves and cutting grass and doing all these things, voluntarily. It was my choice. My parents didn't make me go, right? But it was something that, Peter thought was important. And then just the invaluable conversations, right? And, you had people that were in for violent crimes and blue collar and white collar crimes as well. And they're talking to you during their lunch break and they're giving you guidance on how to navigate life. And I was like, man,
See, what's good about that, Carl, is you're taking, some people could say, well, what does this guy know? He's an ex-con. But what you were doing is you were taking their advice because they made the mistakes, and they're telling you, man, don't make the same mistakes I have.
Correct.
Almost like a parent to their kid. Like, look, I've made a lot of mistakes.
Right.
Here's why I'm telling you this is because I don't want you to make the same mistakes I did. So that's invaluable because you could have completely ignored them and said, I'm smarter than you, man. I'm a better athlete. I've got things going for me.
And that's the thing about it. Like, when you can have parents say, if you don't believe me, ask these people, right? And they're telling you the same thing that your parents have been warning you about, right? And it was so invaluable to me. I can't be more grateful. And I was just talking to a friend. We played against each other in high school, and he went on to DePaul University and played in the NBA, Marty Embry. Mm-hmm. And I just happened to talk to him not long ago, and the first thing we talked about was our experience in Graceland Cemetery.
Right, the
It
work.
was unbelievable, man. Yeah. So we were just had a great work ethic, and I don't know if you want to call it overcoming, but we did what was necessary not to become victims, right? And we had people, case in point, not just the community that worked hard so that we don't have to go into General Motors, but we also had people who made mistakes that were willing to say, look, don't be a victim, right? Don't allow yourself in this situation. You are ahead of the game. Just stay the course, And that was the part that was just the most important life lesson to me that I don't think I could have gotten had I not been in Flint or Detroit or Saginaw, because we were all, and if I went to college, I would have been lost, right? Because navigating a whole nother demographic, if you will, right? I'm a kid from 100,000 people in one city. Tallest building is probably 5 stories. Right, predominantly black, right? And then I walk into this big campus at Michigan State, and just knowing how to navigate people, how to understand people, and I wasn't intimidated. And I think that was had to do with, my young adult experience in Flint, Michigan.
Well, let's talk just a little bit about football. You were a first-round draft pick?
Yep.
So, at some point, you knew you were a good athlete, and people were telling you that. So when did that kick in? Is it when, hey, I was 8 years of age, I ran for 7 touchdowns, or when did it start kicking in and, hey, I'm pretty good at this?
It's so interesting, and maybe I was too naive to believe I was that good. In elementary school, in middle school, I was clumsy. I was just okay. Had a lot of friends that were better than me. And then I think something clicked around that 8th grade, and my coordination started to come. And I had been playing football since I was 9 years old.
Right.
Full pads, right? And just loving it because we had a coach that made us play every position. So I got a chance to say, I can honestly say I was a quarterback at one point, right? But it didn't click until probably like 8th or ninth grade when I said, okay, I got something going here. Could start to jump a little higher, and my coordination became better. So by the time I got to ninth grade, I was dunking a basketball, which was like the most incredible feeling in the world, because I had all of my friends who were better than me in basketball they were all trying to dunk. And all of a sudden, I came out of nowhere dunking this basketball, and they're like, "Where did you take? Right? Let me check your shoes." And the interesting thing is, basketball is my first love. Basketball is the sport that I actually felt I was better at than football. And the only reason is because in football, I was a defensive tackle and an offensive tackle. I didn't get a chance to play linebacker until I got to college. So when I was playing basketball, they didn't think I would be tall enough to play forward. Now, because Magic Johnson became that 6'9" point guard.
Yep.
Ruined it for all the short people, right? Like, so if you're 6'5", 6'4", you better be able to dribble because you're no longer a power forward. But all the college scouts came to see me play basketball just to project what I could be as a football player. And I got all of these D1 scholarship offers just based on, how well I play basketball. It was either going to be a tight end or I was going to be a linebacker.
Yeah, because a lot of basketball players end up being tight ends.
Yeah. And so, and the only reason I wasn't a tight end is because every time they sent me for a pass, I'd catch the ball and run it back and hand it to the coach. And they're like, that's what linebackers do. You go get in the linebacker line. But so, yeah, I felt, okay, I'm going to be good enough. And then I'm recruited. And I chose Michigan State because of Magic Johnson. We were awful. I wouldn't trade the campus experience for anything. But I was a very good college football player. I thought I would be able to play JV basketball at Michigan State. And they had told me I could my freshman year, and I went home and broke my wrist, so I didn't do that. But then, at that time there was no internet, right? You remember the Streets and Smith magazine?
Yeah.
So it was a preseason publication and a postseason publication.
Right.
So they would list all the college, football players, and I'm looking at linebacker to see if my name is anywhere. It's nowhere in the preseason, right? The end of the year, I'm honorable mentioned. So I know I'm a good player, but where did I stack against the guys at Arizona and UCLA and USC? That's where all the big names were. Sure. Oklahoma. And I'm honorable mentioned. And I was like, okay, well, I still don't know where I stack up, but I know I'm pretty good in the Big Ten. And I didn't get a invitation to the NFL Combine or to the Senior Bowl or to any of the All-Star games. And I was 3 years all Big Ten. And my coach says, you're good enough to be a professional athlete. Here's what you need to do. Just not enough people know about you. And so there was this bowl game called the Blue-Gray game.
Yep, I remember watching that.
Mobile, Alabama, played on Christmas Day.
Sure.
And my coach said, this is not the ideal bowl game because everybody wants to go to California to the East-West Shrine or to the Hawaii to the Hula Bowl, but I guarantee you if you play in this game, by the time you get home, you'll be invited to all of those other games, and you will get invited to the Combine. And I was like, okay, Coach, if you say so. But he told me that this was the only bowl game that pro coaches coached both teams. So they got it up close and personal. And I ended up being the most valuable player of that game. And then, sure enough, when I got back, I got invitations to all the other bowl games, and ended up becoming an All-American.
That's awesome.
So yeah,
That's a great story because you
Yeah.
listened to your coach.
yeah,
Yeah, he said go there because you could have been a stubborn guy and go, no, I'm not going. If they
Yeah.
don't think I'm good enough, I'm going to.
right, yeah. And that was a lot of that during that period too. But again, just I would have to attribute it to my upbringing
Right.
and the fact that growing up in Flint was that you listened to people,
Sure.
you took guidance, and you were humble, right? And so I humbly said, okay, coach, if you think it's what I should do, I'm gonna do it. And it worked out great. And then, but the gift and the curse, right? So I do all of that, and I got a chance to see all of the players that I was reading about, right? And they were as advertised. They were as good as advertised, right? They ran good, lifted well, all of those things. And so I got to the NFL Combine, and I did what I did. And I get drafted number 3 overall. And it was great until I learned that I got drafted to a team with 4 all-pro linebackers. Lawrence Taylor, Harry Carson, Brad Van Pelt, and Brian Kelly.
Yeah.
Now, Brad Van Pelt I knew because he was my Jim Thorpe growing up. Our high schools, or our communities played each other all the way through high school, so I knew who he was. And then he went to Michigan State, so he was like our local hero. But I'm like, holy crap. Like, okay,
You think the Giants had a theory of best available, not
best available,
not drafting for needs,
right?
but best guy on the
And
board.
it was best available, but the thing was, Bill Parcells, the conversation with him on draft day was maybe 5 words. Hey, kid, we drafted you. I didn't draft you to sit you on the bench. I'll see you next week. And then it begins, right?
Yeah.
So I show up, and there's the great Lawrence Taylor and the great Harry Carson. And I'm this wide-eyed kid that's like looking at immortality. And I go and introduce myself. Hello, Mr. Carson. Hello, Mr. Taylor. And Lawrence is always unfazed. And to this day, he would say the same thing. What's up, homeboy? And Harry Carson he's sitting on, I don't know, like a milk crate or something in front of the training room. And he doesn't look up much. He just kind of tilts his head and says, so what the hell are you going to do to get on the football field? And I was like, oh, here we go again,
Yeah.
right? But by first practice, I kind of knew why he said that, because watching Lawrence Taylor practice was faster than I ever played a game in college. I mean, his speed in practice was like, I was like, okay, now I see, right? Now you got to get to that level, and then you got to perform. And, obviously my career did what it did, and, the rest is history. So I'm just glad I had the opportunity to actually get that challenge the first thing walking through the door.
You'll probably appreciate this. I had a guy I went to high school with in Edison, New Jersey. He went to Columbia University, was a quarterback. So he was our quarterback, and he went to Columbia, quarterback there. And he was drafted by the Giants or signed to a contract with the Giants. And he was cut. But he said the first time he took a snap on a scout team, he said, I look over right in front of me is Harry Carson.
Yeah.
I look to my left, there's LT. I look to my right, there's Carl Banks, and he says, and there's Gary Reasons. He said, I almost shit myself right there. He said, he said to see those guys on the other side of the ball, he said it was the most intimidating thing. He said, I said, Henny, what did you do? He said, man, I just took a deep breath, got my composure, and I took the snap. And he said, but it was just incredible.
It's, looking at us could be intimidating because we were really the real deal.
Oh, yeah.
And I get a chance to look back on that, and we used to joke about it all the time during games, right? Our big thing was who's going to make their guy quit first, right? And it's crazy to say it, But if you're so dominant that your guy just is like, I don't want it anymore. I'm just going to go through the motions here. And once you got that guy, then we know that the team is about to fold. And it would be, somebody would come off our sideline. It would be Jim Bird or Harry and say, oh, this guy just quit. We got him, And so that was being part of something truly special and just dominant to be able to do that and impose your will on people.
Yeah, it was an incredible defense. It was a lot of fun to watch. Especially I was in law school in Mississippi when you guys played the Broncos in that first Super Bowl.
Yeah.
And had a lot of people rooting for the Broncos, and it was just a lot of fun to have the New York Giants win that Super Bowl. So that was great. And you guys were so talented. It was a lot of fun. But now take me through some of the challenges, you went through there and how you overcame the challenges with going on to a new team, 4 All-Pros, and instead of just saying, all right, I'll just wait my turn. How'd you do that?
It was like the real world in terms of sports, right? Because I'm looking at 4 guys and, Kelly and Van Pelt had not been traded yet. So I'm looking at these guys, and they know that they're about to be traded, and the 2 guys that are left, Lawrence and Harry, are not happy about it because they're replacing all pros with me and Gary Reasons, right? And it was, in particular, me because Gary was a later round draft choice, but I was the number 3 pick. So they're looking at me like, you better come with it, right? And there was no mercy, and I didn't have friends. Like my class that I was drafted with, yes, but veterans, when you talk about hazing and things of that nature, they were relentless when it came to me, and I almost came fisticuffs with a couple, players, and one prominent one, not named Lawrence Taylor, but it got to the point to where I was like, listen, enough, right? But it was the challenge for me was, number one, playing at a level that was acceptable to my teammates, right? It was not even about how good I was, right? When I looked at how good they were, I understood why there was some attitude. I never doubted myself, though, right? But I wanted to make sure that I played at a level that they looked at me and said, we can count on him, right? He's not a liability. He's not a part-time player, and he can do some things that the other guys couldn't do. And that was, obviously, when you look at 2 All-Pro guys leave, and then this guy that's picked the 3rd overall in the draft, they're not going to be happy about it, because they were the crunch bunch.
Sure.
And so all eyes were on me. They weren't going to make it easy for me. I think if I were a lesser person, I probably would have quit with some of the stuff that was going on. But it was to test me, right? So, which a lot of people can't relate to now because of the time restrictions and training camps and things of that nature. The rookies had to come in a week and a half earlier than the veterans, right? And if there was a veteran that was injured, he'd had to come in early with the rookies. So it just so happened that there were a couple inside linebackers that were injured, so Gary Reasons was in with the group. I was the only outside linebacker. Training camp, I did all the drills. I was the first person in line and the last person in line. If you don't know what that means, folks, so if a drill was lasting for 7 minutes, I had to do every rep for that 7 minutes. Instead of you got 10 guys in one line in one grouping and they're just going and doing it, I was down and I was doing everything. And as soon as it seemed like they wanted to give me a breather, there's Parcells breathing down my neck, screaming, why is he stopping? I need him to keep going. I'm like, okay, I'm just going to keep going. But all the other guys were just standing there looking at me like, and like the defensive backs And the defensive linemen and the inside linebackers, they're 5 or 6 deep.
Yep.
And I'm just doing every drill. And so I think it helped build the character in me. And again, it would be so easy at that time to say, the hell with this. You know, I'm a first-round draft choice. What are you going to do, cut me? Right? But that was, you know, that is what the formative years as a New York Giant linebacker were like for me, right? I had to get it, right? I had to, you know, really chisel stone to get, you know, the product of me that I am.
And what you're telling me here is even though you were a first-round draft pick, 3rd overall, there's no entitlement there.
None.
There's a work ethic. There's like, I want to prove to these other guys that are great that I belong and that I'm going to.
Right. And it was, again, for me, I wasn't trying to prove how good I was. I wanted to prove that I was good enough to be on the field with them.
Sure.
Right? Because, again, this is Lawrence Taylor and this Eric Garces. I never doubted I was good enough. But I needed to earn the right to be on the field, because when he says, so what the hell are you going to do? And then I see just how they did it. I'm like, I got to do that and then some, because I got to carve my own lane.
Yep.
I can't be Lawrence Taylor. I can't be Harry Carson. I got to be Carl Banks, right? And so I had to do that, and I had to show that I was good enough to be on the field with them, but that they would accept that I was that guy for them.
So how long was your career?
12 years.
All right. So you're 38-ish when you retire? 39?
30, going on 38, yeah.
All right. So now that we're in our 60s, you realize how young 37 years of age is.
Yeah.
And now you have a whole life.
Yeah.
And a lot of guys can't make that jump, you know, from being an athlete to what's next. And now you went in, and I know you have the gear, the
G3 and Starter. You know, Starter is my brand. Yeah.
So how did that come about? And how were you making that transition? Because, I mean, football is your life. It's all encompassing. I know you're a family man, but as your work life, you had to make a change after you put your entire life into something for so many years.
So the thing that I neglected to say is that before I discovered at Michigan State that I was good enough to be a pro, I was focused on getting my degree. Right? And if you said to me today, would you expect to have the career that you had? I would say in broadcasting and in business, yes. In football, no. Because I didn't take anything for granted when it came to sport, but I knew I was going to be in broadcasting. I knew that I would somehow be involved in creation and being creative with either an agency or writing commercials, because that was my thing. And then fashion was always a passion of mine. And my first year, the Starter brand became the official sideline partner for the NFL. And that kind of revolutionized how fandom looked, felt, and was worn. Fandom became fashionable because everybody wanted to get the great starter jackets and things like that. And I was one of their first players that they signed to endorse the brand. So I got a firsthand look at, you know, what this is like, and I was like, I want to do this, you know, in some capacity. And in doing so, I had to find white space, right? Now, this is my second year in the league. And I knew I wanted to be in sports fashion. I knew I wanted to be in sports apparel, but I didn't know where I wanted to start. So I'm like, leather coats. Nobody was doing leather coats. And so I created this line of leather coats, and I went to the NFL, and the NFL says, you're right, nobody's doing these, so we'll give you an opportunity to start to build your career. So they gave me a license, and I call it a license to fail, because they gave me big and tall suede only leather jackets. Right? And when they told me they were going to let me do it,
Right.
I was like, oh yes, I'm going to have my jackets on everybody, right? And then they're like, big and tall suede only. Okay, well, that's what you're going to give me. I'm going to make the most of it. And no different than my college experience and my days of trying to, earn it with some of the greatest people. I'm like, I'm going to take this challenge too, right? Made it work. Met with, I think Rick Mina at Foot Locker at the time gave me my first shot, right? And it wasn't ideal for them, but, being an athlete, being a decent person, let's give it a shot. We'll try to make this work for you, right? So they bought 2X and down, and obviously they cheated on the sizing a little bit. So maybe an XL, a true XL, was probably a large for them, right? And so business did well. So the NFL says, okay, congratulations. We're going to give you big and tall suede and leather only. I'm like, well, that's a plus. Did well with that, and then I got regular sizes. And then my offering became all outerwear, and now it's all apparel. So right now, to this day, and I've been in business with all the major sports leagues for almost 45 years, and I'm still the #1 outerwear manufacturer in the business. But the white space was there for a reason, because nobody wanted to focus on it. That's just like my career as a strong side linebacker opposite of Lawrence Taylor, right? Nobody wanted to do that type of work and to really be great at it. I did, right? And so just developing that was great. And then, the broadcast piece of it was something I always wanted to do. And before there were these pregame shows, I went out and found a sponsor to do a pregame Carl Banks report. And then after every game, I would go up to the press box and do a postgame report. And that was never heard of. And that worked out. I think Coca-Cola was my sponsor at that time. And I went out and found that sponsor, right? And so being proactive, being opportunistic, and just, I'm doing these things, and, Lawrence and Phil Simms and those guys are doing all the big commercials, but I'm just laying the groundwork for what I wanted to do, right? And just charting my own path.
Which is incredible.
Yeah.
So what's in the future for you now? How's the broadcasting going?
Broadcasting is good. I get a chance to do color analyst for the Giants, and obviously I'm in this podcast space too, and get a chance to express some opinions. Sometimes they're not popular, but they're honest, and it's a different athlete these days who don't like to hear certain things said about them. They only want to be praised. But here's the one adult question. When I knew I was coming on to visit with you, and this has been an adult question, but it didn't hit me until I knew I was going to be talking to you. And I said, as an adult, everybody says, who's your doctor? Who's your dentist? Right? And if I chipped a tooth, I could speed dial my dentist.
Right.
Or two. Right? If I blew my knee out walking out here, I knew exactly who to call. If it's, my general practice, all of these things. And I said, why don't I have a lawyer? Do I have to rely on, something I saw on TV?
Right.
And I'm like, and I've worked with lawyers my whole life in contracts and things of that nature, but it was never like, I need to have, just like I have a doctor,
Right.
I have a dentist, I have an orthopedic, I have an insurance person, right? But the necessity of having a real lawyer, right? And this is, nobody looks for trouble, right? But things happen. Accidents happen. You might find yourself, especially here in New York, and you got to deal with a lot of stuff, right? Subway, whatever, right?
Sure.
Had a guy, so funny, I had a guy, I'm in CVS, and I'm about to self-checkout, and this guy comes up on me, and I'm like, yo, get away from me, right? And I have a friend of mine who takes me, and pulls me away, but I'm just like, that was a close call, right? What if something did happen?
Sure. Who do I call?
I would have to call a friend to get a recommendation.
Right. And I think the reason people don't have lawyers is nobody calls us unless they need us. Now, your dentist, you have to go for a checkup every 6 months. Your doctor, a yearly physical. So you're constantly seeing these people, so you need them. With a lawyer, and I don't want to deal with a lawyer until I have to.
Right.
Like, nobody wants a lawyer until they need a lawyer.
Right.
So is it, in theory, a great idea to have a lawyer? Yes. All my firm does is injury law, but we know everybody, and we know who the good lawyers are, the good criminal lawyers, the good family lawyers. If you need a good tax lawyer, you should always have a lawyer that you could call and say, hey, I know you don't do this, but who do you recommend?
Right.
It's a great idea, but that's the fear with lawyers is people they're intimidated by lawyers, and they only want a lawyer when they need a lawyer.
But injury law kind of covers a lot of things that can happen.
Oh, yeah, it does.
You know what I mean?
Right.
And it's always good to have one, which I'm realizing that's why you're my contacts now. But it's just interesting. I never really thought about it because I've never really been in trouble. But
what you should be doing is, and people don't think like this, is when you're buying your insurance, man, let me call my lawyer and see what should I have and why. Because you can always say, all right, I don't need to do that. That's too much money. But at least get the advice and know why they're being recommended. The same thing if you know somebody that needs like my son's out in Arizona. He's going to ASU. And they had a big raid out there. You may have saw it in the papers where 230 kids. Yeah. He's like, Dad, do you have somebody out here? I said, well, I'm licensed in Arizona, but I'm not flying out to Arizona to take care of this. He said, yes, here's the name of a guy that specializes in municipal court type of cases. And he's very good. Give him a call. But those are the advantages of knowing a lawyer. And the thing with lawyers is I could go into tax court. I've never been there. I don't even know where the hell a tax court is, Carl. And I could represent you. Now, would I do that? Absolutely not. But I know a good tax lawyer. Right? And that's why I said to people, if you're going to hire a lawyer, hire somebody who specializes in that field. Because, and the similarity is, if you have an ankle injury, you're not going to a chiropractor. If you need brain surgery, you're not going to your general practitioner. So you really don't want to go to a jack of all trades. It's good to know one to get a recommendation. But you want to go to a specialist because you want somebody, if it's an injury case, you want a certified civil trial lawyer. That's a guy or gal who actually tries those cases.
You want to know, let's just take this instance that happened to me in the CVS in Manhattan, right? Let's just say it went beyond where it should have, and I slipped throwing a punch. Right? Now, maybe I slipped throwing a punch and I injured myself. I need to know, was I at fault? Was the floor? I mean, you know what I mean? That's where...
that's where you need a lawyer to come and say, well, there's liability questions here. Here's the reason. How were you provoked? Was it an assault? Did he come after you?
Restore security, all these other things.
Because there could be inadequate security there. You could have had a slip coefficient that wasn't proper on the floor that caused you to fall. So there's so much involved.
And you don't think of it, like you said, until you need it. But that's like insurance too. It's better to have it
than not to have it.
Not to have it, right? And so if I never have to dial your number, great. But if I do, at least I know I'm in really good hands.
Right. So it's smart to have. Everybody.
I just never really thought of it that way. And then when I knew I was coming on to sit with you, I was like, I got to ask this question.
Right. But that's a good question. And everybody really, they should have a lawyer that they know, like, and trust, because
Yeah.
that's who people normally hire. Somebody you know, somebody you like, and somebody you trust.
Yeah.
And that's why we have all the billboards. I said to my partners, I said, guys, we're probably one of the top litigation firms in the tri-state area, but nobody knows about us.
Right.
You know, everything's word of mouth. So now we advertise a lot, and people know who we are now.
So litigators, I call them fighters.
Right.
You know, and that's a sport in and of itself.
It
you know, if you've been on the other side of someone who's a real fighter, it's like, you know, facing, like your friend, you said he lined up and he looked at Lawrence Taylor, Harry Carlson, Carl Banks, and Gary Reasons. That's what it's like when you see, you know, a really tough fighter on the other side of a legal situation, especially when you don't know what you're doing.
I've been in cases where I've had top lawyers fly in from one particular case, was a significant case, had a lawyer fly in, top lawyer from Chicago, LA, and Houston. Like, let's go. It's time. Because only one of you can talk at a time.
Right.
If we have to do this, I'm going to be doing all the talking. You guys can split it up, but
Awesome.
we're going. But it's also a comfort level. If you're comfortable, I've tried so many cases in my career that I'm as comfortable in a courtroom as I am in my own house. But now, you walk in, and now you're a rookie, like my buddy Henny, and he's looking at 4 all-pros. Like, holy crap, that's scary.
Yeah.
So again, you wouldn't want a rookie without experience trying that case against the 3 top lawyers from around the country. So you have to, you know, we say right case, right lawyer, because you want to make sure you have your best lawyers handling the most difficult cases.
So it's pretty cool that, and I guess my next question is, because you have a background in athletics.
Right.
What did that, and I'm getting to ask you the question that I always get asked, right? How did you, what did you learn in sports that helped you transition mentally into this profession?
Well, lucky for me, I wasn't just a gifted athlete. My dad's 6'3", won the Penn relays lightning fast. He's French. I look like the Italian side of the family, so I'm 5'10 and a half. You know, 100, and when I was playing sports, I was about 185 pounds, so not the biggest guy in the world. So I had to work at it. And I wasn't a natural athlete. I was a good ball player, but nothing came easy. So I had to learn to work. So, for example, in baseball practice in high school, we had a kid that was running a 4.4 40. I ran against him every day. Every sprint we did, I was next to him. Every, you know, suicide we did, I was next to him, and I would push him because he could cruise. He was so fast,
Right?
And I was right there with him, and my speed increased. So now all of a sudden, I'm stealing bases. Right? I'm faster. Wrestling. I was not a good wrestler, but man, that is such a hard sport. That wrestle and being able to overcome that, and just being in a room and sweating and dieting for hours, it just builds a toughness where you know you can do it. You know, it's like Dan Gable said, after wrestling, everything's easy. Well, it's really a difficult sport transition, and it made me quicker, faster, made me better in other sports. But you learn teamwork, and the most important thing, it's cliche, is you learn how to get knocked on your butt and get back up. Because life, look, I'm the first one in my family to go to college, right? I graduated in the bottom third of my high school class. The only reason I went to college because I could hit a 90-mile-an-hour fastball. So I went to college, and I had a young lady sitting in homeroom. We used to do my homework for me. She says to me, I don't care that you got a scholarship because you're so stupid you're going to flunk out anyway. And I didn't get mad at her. I thought to myself, man, she might be right. So when I went to college, I studied all the time. Made the dean's list, stayed on it. You know, never got anything below a B in college. And then I had the opportunity to go to law school because of that. All these doors open because of the tenacity, the fear of failure, and never wanting to be. I just wanted to be the best I could be.
And the part that people don't realize that I really attribute to my success off the field is that part about adversity, right? The success fail that you have to do in sport. it's not the same as you do in real life. You have time to figure it out.
Yeah.
In real life. What's urgent in real life is not a 45-second clock
Right.
or it's not the next pitch coming,
Right.
right? And, and you're down in the count and you got to, is it going to be a curveball, slider, whatever it is? You got to make that decision. You just whiffed on one and now you don't have a chance to really think about it. That next pitch is coming, right? Or even, in wrestling, when you're down or he's got you in something, you got to figure out how to get out of it, right? Success,
and what's
fail.
nice about wrestling is there's no one else to blame. Right. You learn to be self-sufficient. Right. It's you, and you have to rely upon yourself. And the best thing that happened to me, Carl, honestly, was my dad put me to work full-time at 14 years of age. So when everybody else was doing something fun, I was getting up at 6 in the morning and going to work. And that was Christmas breaks. Any break, I came home all the way through college.
I know it well.
I was swinging a hammer until my last year of law
Same
school.
generation, man,
So, for 14 to 23, every break I had, I was on a roof, I was sheathing houses and working my butt off. So it teaches you a work ethic. And that's to say, you're not going to outwork me, man.
Right. And that's something that the same person that you were parallel with in, let's just say, grad school, right? Your background in sport and their just educational background. It's a different mindset. They might think they're outworking you, and you're saying, just like the guy that ran the 440, the 4.4, I'm gonna keep pushing you. I'm gonna keep. You think you're gonna keep? Watch this. Like, I've learned not to quit. Right. So I'm gonna keep going. You may be a little better here, but watch me. I'm gonna keep getting closer and closer until I pass you. And once I pass you, you won't have what it takes to catch up.
It's amazing, that work ethic, and I have to really thank my dad for that. He really pushed me hard. And then it wasn't a lot of compliments. Like, I would go 4 for 4 in a ball game, and my dad was like, "Yeah, but two of those were leg hits, and, and one of those was a cheap hit." And then when my dad finally says to me, in college, he's like, "Son, I'm really proud of you." It was a senior in college, first time my dad ever told me he's proud of me. And then the next time he said it to me, he says, I was living and I was studying to get my what's called an LLM in law. It's a postdoctorate degree in law in international business finance. And I was living alone in London in a little flat, nothing nice, grew up very poor. And he's saying, "Man, son, I don't know how you do it. You're living over here all by yourself. You're living in a small little place. You have to go to school, work, everything by yourself because you don't know anybody." I said, "Dad, a door opens, I'm going through it. An opportunity opens for me, I'm going through it." So just like you with the Blue-Gray Bowl, same thing. There's an opportunity, you made the best of it. Because you only get in life, people don't realize, you get one shot. And we all know the rapper from Detroit that talks about that. And that's real. You have one chance. People say one chance to make a first impression, but when you have an opportunity, you have to make the best of it because it's only going to come once.
Right, and you don't want to spend your time thinking about, oh, my ego was so big and I turned it down, or look, I could have been this. You're telling stories. I could have been him because I got the opportunity first, but what happened? So you take the best chance you can when you get that opportunity.
And I'm sure I'm a workout fanatic. I try to stay healthy. So every day I say to myself, if it was easy, everybody would do it. You get up at 6 in the morning. If it was easy, everybody would do it.
That is
and I can still hear my dad telling me, that wood's not going to move itself, son. Like, go hump that wood over to the other side. Like, that wood's not going to move itself. That snow's not going to shovel itself.
That's right.
And I think that to myself every day. Hey, Carl, just to finish up today, it's been a great interview, great podcast. But what we're trying to do here is help people. Kind of like your experience with the convicts working at the graveyard, what experience they shared with you. And I tell people all the time, my thing is, if you never quit, you can never fail. That's right. If you never give up. So from you, all pro athlete, incredible entrepreneur in business, what can you tell the youth or the younger people of our country to do to succeed? What are their keys?
I think your key is believing in yourself, right? And never doubting. Like anything is, I just listed 4 things that when I was 8 years old, I didn't think I could do. When I got to 12 years old, I thought I could be okay, but I didn't think I could be at this level. But it's taking advantage of resources, it's asking questions, it's being available, it's hard work. And I always like to say success comes through you, not to you, right? So you've got to put the effort in all of the other things you will attract just by the effort that you use. So I would always tell young people, don't ever feel like you can't, especially in today's world too, where, you have so many platforms to get your message out there. Sure. It's like, use your creativity because your camera is right here. If you need to express an idea, send that message to the right person, you can do that. So believe in yourself.
Thank you. And that'll conclude another episode of Victim to Victory, Triumph Over Tragedy.